Hey, Justin with Hindsight. So, lost some of the footage on the preparation for the install of the T5 in the 56 F100. So, I thought I'd catch you up where I'm at and then show the rest of the install. So, there's the original 3-speed. There's a 3-speed on the column, 3-speed shift on the column. And then there's the T5 with the S10 tail housing. So it's T5 out of a 91 Mustang. So it's got the Ford bolt pattern, obviously. You can do them with the Chevy S10 bolt pattern. It's just not as, I don't know, I won't say it's not as easy, but that's just not how I wanted to do it. So there's the T5, there's the Mustang. And the reason to switch it is the shifter placement. So it moves it forward about 6 inches, 7 inches. So it's not underneath the seat. The only thing I had to do was switch the nose cone to a little bit longer. So you went from a standard Fox body nose to an SN95 nose. It's a little longer, and an input shaft. And then switch the tail housing in the top. And that's about it. Make sure everything's good inside, minus that. So then the other deal was the factory, the Mustang shift or clutch fork, and the factory clutch fork, the factory out of the truck. Wasn't really any way, because you use a factory bell housing. There's the factory bell housing with the adapter plate. So the adapter plate's a little bit thicker. That's why you use the longer input shaft. Lines up really well. I put some die chem on there, and you can tell where the pilot bearing rides, and the clutch is centered really well. So I'm still going to use a factory clutch fork, so it'll mount in the factory bell housing and use all the factory stuff on the front, but I couldn't use a factory throw-up bearing. So I bought a replacement factory throw-up bearing and got an oil light bronze bushing. Did a little turning on it, made it fit. It was really close to begin with. So now that thing slides on there just fine, and I'll be able to use the factory setup. The only other thing that needed to be done is the clutch pivot, because everything's under the floor. The brake and the clutch everything's under. So this used to mount right here, and it would help control the pivot. And I'll show you that stuff underneath the truck here in a little bit. So I ended up fashioning a bracket, did some custom machine work on that, so it'll fit right there. So it'll be in the same position. This point right here will be in the same position that as if it was mounted on here. So everything will line up. Thinking about punching a hole in this area to get the reverse lights. I may do that later. So, because the body of this thing is about the same as that, right? So all I had to do was shorten the drive shaft and get a new yoke that fits the Mustang tail shaft. And that pretty much gets a 5-speed in place of a 3-speed. Okay, so we have the bell housing put in with the MDL adapter, factory clutch fork, throwout bearing with the oil light bushing, so it takes up the space, so it'll be right on the Mustang T5 input shaft or nose. And then it still has the stock pressure plate and flywheel with the T5 disc in there. And then there's the little clutch release arm bracket that had to kind of adapt to make work. But other than that, we will get the transmission put in next. And then that clutch, whatever the hell you want to call that thing. All right. All right, so a little bit of a brake update. So last year on the way to Louisville, we had ended up finding a leak right here. Line wasn't made, I think I had too small of a line going in there and just didn't seal right. So this is the repair that was made in Quick Trip parking lot after making a trip up to Napa. And this cobbled up mess is what got on there. It made it all the way out there and back. And driving around this summer a little bit. We're going to fix that. And then also, so the rear, put a residual valve on for the rear line and adjustable for the rear brakes. That works fine. The front, I tried putting the same thing on, residual valve for the front. I had two of them on there, one for each side. And I didn't like that because it held too much pressure on the front disc brakes. So I eliminated one of them and just left one, and it's still doing the same thing. So I'm going to eliminate that one. The only reason why I put them on there was after lowering the vehicle so much, the level in the master cylinder is below the calipers and the wheel cylinders. So fluid will bleed back and sometimes come out of the master cylinder, sometimes not, whatever. So the residual valve keeps that from happening, but also keeps a little too much pressure on the front and it drags. And I'm going to see if I can eliminate that. Well, that's what I'm going to work on now. So I'm going to make a new line going from here up to this T, getting rid of this, and then also make another line, get this a little better than that mess that's right there. Well, got the shifter in after a little bit of an extension because it just wasn't going to reach earlier. That's first gear. There's second gear, and so forth. There's third. So, a little bit of a long throw, but I think it'll get us going. A little bit of cleanup work, put a shift boot on it. Ought to be fun.